Hi guys, how are you? Thank you so much for being here. Nate, thank you. The Code City community, thank you. I'm already too tall, obviously, to be standing in that spot. I didn't know I shouldn't have worn my heels tonight. But thank you all so much for being here. I think Code City is amazing, right? Because it is a bunch of tech people, it's a bunch of community advocates, it's a bunch of artists, it's stay-at-home moms, it's entrepreneurs, it's business professionals, it's everybody. And you have done something in Toledo that, quite frankly, hasn't really been done before, which is breaking down the silos that need to be taken down in order for us to all come together to do some ridiculously amazing stuff in this community. And so thank you, Nate. Thank you, Code City, for doing what needed to be done. And thank you, each and every one of you, for being here this evening, because I get what it takes to be at this sort of thing. So I know some of you got sitters, right, to be here. Some of you had to work an act of Congress in order with your significant other, right, to do something with your kids to be here. Some of you are really busy with work, right, and you've got some stuff going on. So thank you for being here this evening, and whatever it is that it took for your butt to be in that seat, thank you. And Nate asked me a couple of months ago if I would speak at this event, and of course the answer was yes. But when Nate came back with a couple of different dates, 9/11 was one of them. And so I knew the minute that I saw 9/11, it was in that second that I knew that that was going to be the date that I was going to be here to speak to all of you tonight, because clearly it holds some significance, right? So 16 years ago, obviously on this day, a tragedy happened within our nation, and 2,996 lives were lost. And so if you fast forward 16 years from now, I feel that those 2,996 lives that were lost still hold significance today, because we're here and they are not. And there's significance and value to our skill sets. There's significance and value to that butt and that seat, and what it is that you're able to deliver, whether it's to your family, to your community, and to the world that you live in. And so I thought when we would do this talk tonight, right, mirror, mirror on the wall, who am I versus who am I really? That it's getting from that point A to that point A of significance that is really going to provide the opportunities that we need in order for each of us to have a better world. But what does it take, right? What does it take in order to get who I see versus who I really am? And I think it's one answer. I think it's vulnerability. And if any of you are into Brené Brown, I know that, right, like that's her jam. It's all about vulnerability. You know, it was really humbling as I was sitting over here and Nate asked who was here for Alicia. If you were to ask me even probably for sure 10 years ago, 5 years ago, you know, I lived in this existence of perfection where I think I had to have my SHIT all together, and that I wasn't allowed to be imperfect to my community or the people that existed in front of me. And it was actually through vulnerability that I was able to find my jam. And it was so humbling standing there seeing the friends and the supporters that were here tonight, because I had to get out of my own way in order for that to happen. And man, it like just warms my heart that I know how many good friends are actually here tonight, because I didn't have that a while ago. And it was rather lonely and depressing, and so it fills my eyes seriously with tears right now to just know the amount of love that I have for those people that are here and the amount of love that they have for me. So thank you. But I had to do some hard work to get there. And that's the point of this presentation tonight and the significance of those 2,996 lives, because we are here and we must get out of our own way, because there's a lot of BS that we're standing behind and a lot of lies that we're telling ourselves that's preventing us from getting to our truth. And so I thought really quick, I would just give everybody an example. So I'm not one that just likes to talk. I want to give you like in the moment, tangible things, right, to feel so that you can actually move forward doing something different. So if you're into visualizing or you like your space, right, I just want everybody to get present for a minute. And I want to ask you to just kind of either close your eyes, or I want you to think, why am I here? Why did I come tonight? Why are you here? And just take, and if you're watching on the replay, right, why did you hit play on that button and watch this video? Why are you here? All right, so I have one more question. Why are you really here? Why are you really here? So it makes sense that I'm here because Nate asked me and he wanted me to share my story with you today, but do you want to know why I'm really here? I'm really here because I now have 2 beating heartbeats outside of myself that are needing to exist in a world that I would like to see better than the way that it stands today. That's why I'm here. But I have to do my part in order for that world, and I need your help in order to do that, because I don't want that just for my kids. I want that for your kids. I want that for you. I want that for everybody. And I can't do it by myself. So I'm really here because I want to see something change, right? So I thought, right, like this vulnerability thing, you know, as someone who used to be a coach and stepping out of that world, even just most recently here, if I'm going to ask you to have some more vulnerability, I sure as heck be able, right? Practice what you preach, right, sister? So I want to take you back into my story a little bit, right? So I'm from Wapakoneta, small little farm town, about an hour and a half down on 75, right? It's a town of about 10,000 people. And I remember one day, my dad is like this tough, burly guy, right? And I'm the oldest of 3. I was the first child. And so this whole parenting thing to him was a little foreign, right? Like it was difficult. And I think for a lot of men that were growing up during that time, right? Like I am so humbled today by dads that I see and how we finally have this permission to be, right, mothers and fathers together and co-create and parent these children. And so, but my dad, right, like it was just hard. That's the era that we grew up in. And so from a very young age, the fact that he said to me one day, Alicia, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm like, holy cow, like that happened. Like he asked me what I wanted, right? And I said, Dad, I want to be a doctor or I want to be a lawyer. And I wanted to be a pediatrician because like my heart, again, beats for children, right? And I wanted to be a lawyer because of the injustice aspect, right? Of how many people that they can't defend themselves and they need someone to help defend them. Like that was my jam, right? But I remember my dad saying to me, Alicia, I think you should be a flight attendant. I'm like, a flight attendant? Right? And so what I did from a very young age was I took my value and worth and I put it in a box and I put it up on a shelf. And I that day decided that I was going to not be smart enough to be a doctor or a lawyer. And so that's how I put myself through life, right? I had this belief, I had this lie about myself that I carried with me, and every decision from that day forward, that's what went through my filter, right? I went to college for all the wrong reasons. I followed a guy. I picked the wrong major for a reason. I made some really bad decisions that were a reaction from, right, that experience within my life. And so my dad, his intent was not to do that. His intent, I'm sure, was, and I know now, I want you to travel, I want you to get out of here, and I want you to have a better life than what I did. But that's not what I heard, because he wasn't willing to be more vulnerable to say that. And I, obviously, at the age I wasn't, right, understanding what he meant. But we do this all day long. Our world is feeding us messages, our media is feeding us messages, our family's feeding us messages, right? And so one of my favorite quotes is, the truth is so valuable that it oftentimes has a bodyguard of lies. The truth is so valuable that it often has a bodyguard of lies. And so for so long, right, I kept going through life and I could not figure out why things felt so hard. And so I couldn't quite grasp, like, why can't things change? Why do I keep running into these obstacles? And then one day, right, I find myself in corporate America, and so I kept running into these issues, and it was because it was the same trigger. It was men in my life who were not willing to see my value and worth, and so I kept trying to prove myself. And so I kept wanting the company to change. And the responsibility wasn't for the company to change, it was for me to change. It was for me to harness my value and worth and who I was as an individual. So finally, after running into these issues, right, I went for a promotion, I didn't get it. If you wonder where my women's empowerment comes from, right, it's this aspect of continuously seeing within this realm, right, and not every person and not every company does this, but my experience, right, every single male colleague was getting promoted and I wasn't. And I saw that the sales weren't as good. I saw that the competency scores weren't as good. And so I finally went to my mentor and asked why this was happening. And the answer was, truly, Alicia, until you get a ring on your finger, you're married and you have kids, that's likely not going to happen for you. And so I put my value and worth in a role instead of who I was. And when that basket crashed with all those eggs, like literally went into a depression, right? And so for a year, I truly hit rock bottom. But that's usually where you find yourself, right? Because there's nothing else down there besides you. And you have to figure it out. And my story's not unique. There's so many stories that are out there, right? It's rock bottom where you find yourself. It's rock bottom. So while I'm down there, right, I'm not willing to ask for help. And that's why it took way too darn long for me to climb out. And so I heard one day, by the grace of God, this concept of a coach, right? And I'm like, okay, that's super foo-foo-y. I know that's probably stuff they do out in California, but like, I don't need that, right? Like, I can figure this out myself. And so I fought it for a year. And finally, there I am one day looking back, waving my flag, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Nothing has changed, right? Nothing has changed. So I dialed up this coach, and like, no kidding, 3 months after going through this process, I recognized there's who I see that I am, and then 3 months later, that's who I really am. And it was letting go of the pain, it was letting go of the lies, it was letting go of the old beliefs, behaviors, and patterns that other people had taught me that quite frankly just weren't fitting who I was as an individual and a person. It wasn't the values of who I was, right? And so that's hard because there's people that don't want to be around you anymore when you change your values. And so there was a lot of realignment as to, did I want to stay where I was working, right? The people that I was hanging out with, the type of work that I wanted, the type of relationships that I was in. And so it changed everything. And so it was very difficult to want to climb out of that because it's scary, right? You're reinventing who you are as a person. And so after climbing out, I had to make a decision, right? People thought I was certifiably crazy because for my age and tenure as to where I was at in corporate America, I was getting promoted quicker and faster than anybody my age, right? And then I hit that glass ceiling, but they were laying off more than they were hiring. And so I had to make the decision, was I going to stay and keep my health insurance, free medications, spending accounts, the ridiculous salary that I was making, the bonuses, right? Like all of these perks that come with this life. And for me, it wasn't worth it anymore. And so I left, and seriously, right, the people that thought I was certifiably crazy for making that decision. And so I started Heels Coaching and Consulting. I wanted to help more women find what I got out of my experience. And so for the past 5 years, that's what I've been doing with Heels Coaching and Consulting, helping women stand tall, helping them finding their value, helping them finding their worth, right? And it's been one of the most humbling experiences. Outside of finding my significant other and having my 2 children, right? Finding myself ranks right up there, but these lives, right, over the past 5 years that I've had the honor and privilege, like that is life changing, right? Like I hope that's the kind of work that I can continue to do, and why I know it's going to look different, that's okay, but changing lives, we all have the capacity to do that. We all have the capacity to do that each and every day. And so the difference in being able to do it is who am I seeing versus who am I really, and the vulnerability that can come with that. I was fine as of 5 years ago, plugging along, doing the work that I was doing. I finally had worked myself back up, right, into the salary that I wanted to be making, you know, the comfort that I was experiencing. Who here owns their own business? Yeah, quite a few of you. It takes some time, doesn't it, to get it off the ground. So I kept getting these signs, guys, that, right, like I'd built this up for 5 years and all of a sudden I was supposed to put it down. Like, that's crazy talk. Like, that's crazy talk. And some of my friends are here now that, like, you know, bringing that up with them, and they're like, I mean, Brandy's sitting here. Like, I remember starting to talk to her about this, and your response was, are you sure, right? Like, this is off the reservation, right? And so, my daughter ended up being born, and she had allergies. She had a dairy allergy, she had skin sensitivities, and you know, that's a whole nother talk, but the aspect of what I thought motherhood was going to be and what motherhood actually is, like I thought I was gonna take all my baby shower crap And on my maternity leave, I was gonna go pack it up and meet all my other friends, and we were gonna like go sip on coffee, and our babies were going to quietly live there. Like, I really thought this. I'm an educated, smart lady, and I really thought this. And some people get to do it, right? I mean, before kids, am I the only one? I'm not. We all really thought like this is how it worked because nobody talks about this stuff, right? So my daughter was born, and she went to Perrysburg Pediatrics and was the worst colic baby that my doctor said he'd ever seen. It's a busy practice, okay? Ever seen. And so I didn't shower basically for 3 months. I held my child nonstop for close to 90 days, and she cried nonstop. And talk about, again, rock bottom and what I thought motherhood was going to be and what it turned out to be. It was completely two totally different things. And that reinvention part of yourself again and coming to terms with who do I want to be, right, versus who am I really? And talk about like the amount of unconditional love, right? Like there was a lot of proving there, right? Because my kid was supposed to be this and my kid was that. And so I really struggled, right? Because you can control a lot of things pre-kids and then you have children and you can't, like there's so many things that you cannot control. And so my daughter had these allergies, and had my daughter not had these allergies, right, I wouldn't have gotten into this food movement because it's due to the toxins, right, and a lot of the chemicals that are in our food that we now have issues with our food integrity and the access to getting clean food, right? And so I got pregnant with my son, and I'm like, this is not going to happen again. And so I heard about this place called Fallon Fodder, right? And so I lived at this restaurant seriously almost every single day while I was pregnant with my son. And the irony of that is while I was also doing heels coaching and consulting, 2 years into that, I got a call from St. Ursula. And they said, would you be interested in interviewing for this new Women in Leadership course, right? And so rationally, you guys, it made no sense. It made no sense. I was busy, and I was already busy. I had a family. I was involved in nonprofits. I was sitting on boards. I was doing committees. The money, I could have picked up 2 clients. And over the 9-week period that I would have been teaching that course, I would have made more money taking on 2 clients than I would have done working every day for 9 weeks. So rationally, I'm taking this through my filter, right? I'm like, this makes no sense. I shouldn't take it. But I knew in my heart of hearts that it was the absolute right thing to do. And so I took that class. And it's from taking that class that I ended up at Fallon Fodder every single day, eating, getting to know Chef Scott, getting to know his vision, getting to know his restaurant. And at the time, again, sometimes these things, they do not make sense, but who we are and what our mind wants to tell us versus who we really are and what our heart wants to tell us, right? There's a vulnerability factor there. I had to let go of the money because my ego so badly wanted to be like, you have worked yourself past, right? Like taking this sort of income. You have worked really hard. I mean, all of this self-talk. And I had to put it all down and be like, no, that's not working for the vision that I have, which is making this world better, right? For the 2 beating hearts outside of me, but also for everyone else. So outside of the 60-some girls that I was able to work with, again, an insanely humbling experience, it's also how I got involved with the next chapter of my life, which is co-owner now of the new Fallon Fodder that's in downtown Toledo. And stepping into that who am I really and really staying aligned with that vision, I can't even begin to tell you some of the other things that are starting to unfold. There's this food hub in Toledo where a group of us now are trying to work on helping feed people who have food insecurity in our area. We now have a group of people, right, that we're trying to talk about different ways to help improve Adams Street, right? We have Matt Rubin, who's here tonight, by stepping into his vision and who he is. He's co-owner in Crane Development and also at Hart Associates. But by Matt stepping into his vision, by me stepping into mine, and by Scott stepping into his, it's now we have this trifecta, right? And that's what I was talking about at the beginning, that when we can all find our significance, the puzzle starts to fall together. But when we don't take our responsibility for our part, things can't fill in. But I feel that, again, based on those 2,996 lives that we lost 16 years ago, those people aren't here. And we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to them to do our part to continue to make this world a better place. And we can't do it unless we're all individually doing our parts. But we have to overcome that fear, right? So what does that look like? How do we exude more vulnerability within our lives, right? So did somebody, when you did that exercise earlier, who actually had a change in perspective or a change from why they were here versus why they're really here? Yeah. Would you share it with us?
Yeah, I like sharing. I think the first thing I thought was, Alicia always says cool stuff, either in small interactions or large interactions. So if someone gives her a bunch of time to talk, she's going to say maybe a few more cool things. Then, I think the second time I thought about it, I thought about myself a little more for what I want to do tomorrow. I think I keep trying to distill everything down to, I need to figure out what actions I'm going to take, because we all have a lot of ideas, and we put them away and we just perform actions or behaviors. So I think I want to keep guiding what I do tomorrow. What I learned today.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And it's that level, that next level of consciousness, right? Like that's what's going to get us there. I can't tell you as a life and business coach how many times my phone rang of people calling and they checked out the process and what it was going to entail and what they were going to need to do, and then you kind of hear crickets at the end of the phone for a minute. And there's been so many people. Is there just a book that I can read on how to do this? No, that's not how that works, right? And that's why the leadership industry and the self-help industry is a bajillion-dollar industry. And at this point, right, we'd hope that the numbers are going down because that means the stuff that everybody's reading is actually like, right, improving the situation. But it takes, again, all of us individually getting, right? Here's why I think I'm here. Oh, wait, here's why I'm really here. And it's getting to that next level of consciousness and permission to exist on that field on a continuous basis. But it takes some vulnerability. Why do you think it takes vulnerability? Why is it hard to be honest with ourselves? We're constantly lying to ourselves. Is there judgment in that? Yeah. I can't begin to tell you when I left Pfizer, I mean, my dad thought that was the stupidest thing I'd ever done, right? Or, there's people that when you put yourself out there, even in this manner, they take it for being arrogant. And we hear as women especially, right? Anytime you're out there doing something really cool or fun, how many people want to be like, look at her. Who does she think she is, right? And so it's scary, right? It's hard. We have judgment of ourselves, and then we have judgment from others, right? One of the other things that I know, and I think Savannah just brought it up, is I'm really interested in doing this pitch and pour concept, right? I've had this idea for this tech concept for a while. I don't have any experience in tech, I have zero, right? Like training and development has been my jam for a really long time, and then again, this restaurant thing's coming out of nowhere, so let's just go ahead and throw tech in there too, right? Because that makes a lot of sense. Like, let's do that. And so just last week, it was some of the people that are sitting in this room, I shoot them a text, right? And I'm like, look guys, here's what I'm thinking. And they're like, go for it, right? But I had to be vulnerable and put myself out there. Like, that's crazy. You kind of are doing this new thing that really, right? Like that's out of nowhere. And so, Brandy this time just shook her head, right? And said, okay, like go for it. But it was really cool. I reached out to a friend who I emailed who's in this space, and they said something to me and they went through, what would be good about it, what would be hard, here are some things to consider. But do you know what they left me with, right? They left me with, Alicia, you're a powerhouse entrepreneur and you're a captivating presence, and damn it, you're an awesome businesswoman. And I'm like, wow, that's who I really am. But we let life get in the way, right? We have these lies that I tell ourselves. We get busy. It's like when you put your stuff down at the beach and then you go in the water and you play for a while and you're with your family, and then all of a sudden it's time to get out and you look and your stuff's clear over here now because the current took you away. And that's what happens all day long in life. We get busy and things take us, and then it's like, wait, that's who I really am. Right? And so we have to have our village, we have to have our tribe, we have to have our people who keep reminding us. And so I think what we're really missing in self-help is we're always working on us. And I think that's incredibly important, and we need to know who we are. But do you know what the 12th step is for Alcoholics Anonymous? Helping someone else. Helping someone else. I just learned that from Simon Sinek's Leaders Eat Last podcast the other day, and I'm like, wow. And I think it goes to what it is that we're talking about. It goes to, again, even so many of the people that I love here that are here to support. It goes with even with what I'm trying to accomplish and who I really am. It involves helping other people. But I had to get out of my own way and stop lying to myself about not being good enough, taking that box back off the shelf from when I was a little girl, opening it up and being really willing to exploring the scary stuff that was in there and actually saying, you know what? You have some ridiculously amazing things to add to this world. And by you working with me and you working with me and you working with me, we can actually even do more ridiculously amazing things in this world. So how do you do that, right? I call it the internal GPS system. You plug that address in. Mine is helping, right, more people's hearts beat to finding their jam in this world. That's my vision. I plug that in, and then I hit go, and then you go. And things are going to attract. It was like me, right, knowing in my heart St. Ursula was the right move, knowing in my heart. And what was on the other side? Fallon fodder. From taking Fallon fodder, what's been on the other side? This food hub, you know, connection with amazing community leaders, working with other individuals on possible community type projects that are coming up. None of that would have happened had I not taken the risk and plugged into my GPS. Are there roadblocks? Are roads closed? Trees fall over in the way? You bet. But what happens when your GPS, when something goes awry? Reroute. Reroute. So many people want to stand there and be like, nah, that was my plan, I'm going that way. And if it feels hard, it is. It's one of my favorite quotes. If it feels hard, it is. Turn around and recalculate, and the other way is actually likely going to be so much better. Even with the restaurant right now, I cannot begin to tell you the amount of unknowns, and it's so easy in that moment. I know you guys get it. I know in that moment it makes absolutely no sense. We are so grateful for what happened because there's been about 5 different major changes that we've made due to the extra time that we've gotten from that process. Am I right? And without those roadblocks, without those recalculates, you have to trust the process. But you have to have some vulnerability in there, and you have to ask for some help along the way as well. So here's what I want to do really quick. I want to give you another tangible on how do you do that, right? So if you're plugging in your GPS, I want you to raise your hand, and I'm stealing this from my girl Brandy. She's also a consultant, and we do a lot of this in coaching, but I want you to raise your hand as high as it will go. As high as it will go, guys. All right, I want you to raise it just a little bit more. All right, put your hand down. Why didn't you raise it as high as it could go the first time? It does hurt, right? It does hurt. That's the point. Who do I see versus who am I really? And finding what that is, getting to that next level of consciousness to know what needs to happen in order to get there. But it's going to take a level of vulnerability. It's going to take a level of vulnerability. It might be another person. It might be seeing a therapist. It might be hiring a coach, right? It might be letting go of something. It might be putting something else on that you've been ignoring and lying to yourself about, right? It might be getting out of a relationship. It might be taking a different job. It might be deciding to stay home instead of working. I don't know, guys. I don't know what it is for you. And I think that's the problem is we're looking at everybody else and how they're doing it instead of how we should be doing it. That's part of the problem. So I want to leave you with a quote on who am I versus who am I really. And it's by Marianne Williamson, and if I can fumble through the 28 pictures I took of my kids between last night and this morning in order to find this quote for you. Marianne Williamson is a spiritual teacher and author, and she's a dynamite woman. You ready? Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So my ask and call for each of you is to look at who you are versus who you really think you are, and getting to that next level of consciousness so that you can step into that definition of yourself. Because again, I picked the significance of this day because I don't think we just owe it to ourselves. I think every year, instead of an anniversary coming by that we get to just see on the news and feel really deeply for, that our way of giving back to this tragic event is to live deeply in who we are each and every day, because we're here and we're able to help continue to move our world forward.